Welcome to Financial Services What's Up?
This podcast brings together experts from the financial service world to figure out what financial market participants could and should be doing to embrace the biggest challenges and opportunities of the financial sector.
I'm Björn Ebert, the financial service leader at PwC Luxembourg.
And I'm Sandra Paulis, an asset management partner at PwC here in Luxembourg, and very keen to discuss our industry together. Welcome to the first episode in a new PwC Luxembourg podcast series, Financial Services What's Up? We are thrilled to embark on this new adventure, and you might be wondering, why are Sandra and Björn diving into the world of podcasting?
Well, there's a bit of everything in there. From our love of learning and exploring new horizons to a deep appreciation for the podcast world itself.
And beyond our personal motives, there's a strong professional drive. Staying ahead in the financial sector requires constantly keeping up to speed, and we are eager to provide value by sharing our knowledge and insights.
So what can you expect from this PwC podcast? We believe our unique perspectives, as well as those of our future guests, will offer you a well-rounded understanding of the financial world.
Stay tuned for insightful discussions, expert analysis, and a sprinkle of our personalities. Subscribe now and get ready to explore the financial world with us.
Sandra, let's get started. What's the topic of the day?
Well, Björn, in this first episode, we'll set the scene. It's about exploring and discussing what the world is dealing with right now, and of course the impact on the financial sector. As you know, the ultra-low interest period has ended, and we would like to explore the new macroeconomic context we are in. What are the key facts in this new context? What is impacting its further evolution, and how does it influence the financial sector?
To answer these questions, we are talking today to Dariush Yazdani. Dariush leads the global PwC AWM and ESG Market Research Center based in Luxembourg. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Dariush, could you tell us a little bit more about the PwC Asset and Wealth Management and ESG, the Market Research Center? What is it about?
Sure, Sandra. The Market Research Center basically looks into the future of the industry on a rolling basis for the coming 5 years. We also support our clients who are asset managers, associations, and governments, as well as EU institutions, in looking at how the industry will develop and how they can further their business and attract more business. These include market studies, these include fees, benchmarking, as well as predictive analysis and impact analysis.
Dariush, you know, I always call you our crystal ball within PwC, so really pleased to have you here with us today. So today, you know, we are talking about the current macroeconomic and geopolitical situation and the impact on the financial sector. Dariush, according to you, what would be actually the key indicators that are shaping the current environment, not only in the European Union, but also in the US? And how would you expect them actually to develop going forward, let's say in a future of around 1 to 2 years?
Sure, Sandra. I think we are currently in a very remarkable time period from an industry perspective, as well as from a macroeconomic perspective and geopolitical perspective. If I look at it from a macroeconomic perspective, inflation and interest rates have been elevated. I think the last time you saw that elevation was in the 1980s. Now, what has turned to that is that COVID has definitely been, I would say, an accelerator to that inflation and consequently the interest rate hikes by the Fed and the ECB. Because during COVID, you had the issues with supply chains as well as the saving rates that went on higher as people were just caught in their houses. And now what we are seeing currently is that after the hikes of the Fed and the ECB, inflation has gone down, but still it is not within the corridor of 2 to 2.5%. If you look at the US, we are currently at 3.9%. And within EU, we are currently at 3.3%. And if I look at it, our expectations for 2024, we are expecting that inflation in the US will go down to 2.7% and in the EU at round about 2.9%, which is still not within the corridor. If you look also that from an economic perspective, GDP is slowly declining. In US is the only one that is still upwards trending at 2.5%. If you look at 2023, EU is almost 0% growth. UK already went into a technical recession as of the fourth quarter of 2023. So we believe that this will give the pace for further interest rate, or let's put it that way, interest rate declines as we go forward, because our expectations of GDP for US is at 1.4% and for EU at 0.8%. So if we look at that, we expect Fed and the ECB to start decreasing interest rates by 25 basis points and 3 times in 2024. And then in 2025, as inflation reaches that normalized corridor, that we reach within the corridor of interest rates of between 2.5% and 3.5%. However, we won't see the 0% interest rate anymore. Yeah, I don't think so. That we will see that again. The normalized interest rate would be at 2.5 to 3.5%.
Okay, so I take note that 2025 is actually the year of the stabilization of the interest rates, and that gives some positive outlook. Thanks for that. I think we all need that. Now, looking at the geopolitical elements that you see impacting the global market and the economies, what would be those that would be the most relevant for you?
I think there are multiple risks on the horizon from a geopolitical perspective. You need to look at, if there is expansion of the Ukraine-Russia crisis towards NATO, which can definitely have a huge negative impact on the markets. The same is true between the tensions between US and China on Taiwan. We know that definitely would have a clear negative impact on the markets again, as well as the Israel-Gaza tensions and war that could expand to a regional war, which would be always negative towards the markets. And the last one, definitely not not to be underestimated, are the elections in the U.S. In November 2024 to see how those outcomes are and how the policies will develop after those elections.
Yeah, so definitely a few geopolitical risks that we should not underestimate, and also see how this will then impact the inflation and the interest rate that you just described. And yes, we are in a year of elections. You mentioned the US elections. There are also the European Union who is going into election this year. Yeah, so many people will have the right to express their opinion, and we can get prepared for the likely scenarios and outcomes that this will bring. Björn, now let's turn to the financial sector. How would you actually link the FS thoughts from the macroeconomic point of view and geopolitical picture that Dariush just painted?
Sandra, that's really an interesting question. I think, over the past few years, the financial sector has really demonstrated its ability to successfully navigate to this uncertainty. And I think they also survived through the global pandemic with remarkable resilience. So I think the resilience is really helpful also in the current environment. Mm-hmm. And just come back to what Dariush just said, with the declining interest rates, I think that will have a positive impact on the asset managers as well as also the private markets. And from an asset management point of view, I think we will see increased activities in setting up new products. And I also think that we are seeing net inflows, especially in the public markets. And I also think that, for the fundraising, we will see higher fundraising and deal making for the private side. And then if you look at the portfolios, I guess we will see risk deleveraging of some portfolios because the interest-free rates are quite high. And I guess that's now also the expectation that they probably decline. And that's why I think some investors will shift from riskier assets to high-grade bonds.
Thank you, Björn, for that. And when you think about the banks, where do you see actually their journey going?
I believe that if you look at the banks as such, that if you look at 2023, they really show strong results. And that's in my view because we have seen a really sharp increase in the interest rates, and that's really helped them for the results in 2023. And my best guess is for 24 that we see similar results on similar levels. But if I look at the loan portfolio, I would be a bit cautious because I think there is potential of impairment, especially in some asset classes like commercial real estate.
Yeah, so in general, you are still drawing a rather positive picture, if I can say so, in the context of the declining interest rates. Still, we have heard there's quite some time before we are there. So the resilience is the word to be used for the meantime. And now, if you would think about or consider the primary focus areas for the FS leaders in 2024, what would those be in your opinion?
Sandra, we released just recently our global CEO survey, and I looked at that, and I think for me there are 3 priorities. So for me is one, that moving fast but responsibly on generative AI. Then I think the second point is going beyond decarbonization for sustainability. And the third point is really addressing inefficiencies. And just to deep dive now on the first point, I think most of the FS CEOs, they told us that they expect that generative AI will increase efficiency for the employees. And they also tell us that they improve the quality of their products and services. And I think they still pay also attention to cybersecurity risks and biases. So overall, I would say there's really a bright potential, and they should really take that serious and consistently, and also watch out for potential pitfalls. I think on my second point with sustainability, they told us that they're really making progress in improving the energy efficiency, also including reducing energy consumption. But when I talked to some of the FS CEOs, I understood that there are less plans for other climate action, such as, for example, nature-based solutions. And coming now to my third point, inefficiencies. I mean, all of the FS CEOs told me there are enormous inefficiencies in their company's administrative processes, and they themselves estimate that for trillions of dollars. So I recommend to free up resources, you really should tightening your meeting protocols, streamlining your hiring, and should look at the performance review processes.
So that's some really, really concrete actions. I really like that. So thanks, Björn, for sharing that. Dariush, now back to you. Driving growth in the current environment. So what are actually the opportunities that the FS leaders should prioritize, in your opinion?
Sandra, if I'm looking at it from an EU perspective, definitely the green transition and the sustainability is one of the key points where we need to look at from a growth perspective. We already saw that growth picking up when the new regulations were put in place from 2020 to now, but I believe there is still a lot of new products and new developments that can take place within that, where asset managers as well as financial services as such can take advantage of it to build further their business. On the other side, if I look at the asset management industry, clearly private markets is something which can help towards that transition of the economy, but as well as financing some of the place where governments are having difficulties to finance. As an example, I can give you the infrastructure, where clearly there are gaps where governments have been financing that towards with the banks, and now governments being in debt, as well as banks having the capital restrictions, there is a clear opportunity for infrastructure for the private market players and asset managers to jump on that. And this mega trend is going to take on for the coming 2 decades at least, because we have on the one side, on the developing world, where you are seeing the rise of mega cities and where you need those financing for hospitals, for schools and others, as well as the development of new technologies in the developed world, where you would require for 5G technologies and others, renewable energy, where you require those new infrastructure financing, as well as the renewal of the aging infrastructure in the developed countries.
Dariush, fully agree to that, what you just stated. I also believe the FS industry will be the catalyst for progress in these two dimensions. And I guess if the market players get that right, they set the stage for competitive advantage for the medium and long term.
Björn, we are coming to an end. I would like to ask you, what would be the key takeaways for you for this session today?
Yeah, I noted down a couple of them. Let's get started with my number one. My takeaway was that the FS sector really successfully navigated to the uncertainties over the last years. If I look now at the current situation, and Dariush talked about that, high inflation rates, high interest rates, I think that the FS sector is really resilient. My second point was that I think there are opportunities out there for the whole industry. And for me, the two main ones, and just Dario mentioned them, is the green and digital transformation. And I think that will really drive the growth. Third point for me is the geopolitical conditions. I think they really remain challenging. If you look at all the actual conflicts around the world, and that's really create uncertainty for businesses and also for entire economies. And I think what we also talked about was the number of elections this year. And just to state, the US presidential one in November is most probably the most important one. And then on my notes, last but not least, I think there is one big opportunity out there for all of us, and that's generative AI. I think this technology can really move the needle, and it will help to eliminate operational inefficiency, and I think it helps us to get ready to increase our productivity enormously.
So it's time to close today's session. In each episode, we would like to conclude with a fact or a number from the financial sector that caught the attention of our guest during the last month. So Dariush, as our guest, what struck you lately? What is your number or fact?
Sandra, from a research perspective, when we were doing our report, one of the key numbers that caught my eye is the revenues of private markets as to the total revenues of industry, which are at above 47%. And if you look at it, private markets was not so high 10 years ago, and now they are going to make up that number. And if you look at passives, which are growing very, very, very strongly, their amount of revenues to this industry is only at 6%. So clearly that was one of the numbers that stuck into my head.
Okay, thank you. So we couldn't cover all the challenges the world is facing right now, and that would have been way too much, but we did our best to paint a picture of how things in the last 2 to 3 years have rapidly shifted the global macroeconomic context and what new priorities and challenges have emerged.
Speaking about what's coming next, we will deep dive into more FS-focused topics, such as AI or private markets. Excited to see things will develop and whether unexpected events or trends will coming up. Sandra and Dariush, it was a great pleasure talking to you today. Wish you both a wonderful day. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks to all the listeners. Hope it was meaningful, and we are really looking forward to our next podcast. Don't miss out on any future episodes by hitting subscribe. Thank you for listening, and until the next episode.